Hello, beautiful. And what I'd really like to know is what is good in your life today? This is Kia with another episode of the Female Veterans Podcast. Today, I'm very excited to have a Marine in the house. I don't often get to interview Marines. Now, I have interviewed several, so you can find their episodes. You can actually start listening to, I keep forgetting to, to tell you guys about this, but I'm on something called a CHW streaming app. It's a radio streaming app. And you can download it from Google Play. It's CHW. It's awesome. It's like a whole radio station with different podcasts, and mine is one of them. So I will be announcing about that on Instagram at the Female Veterans Podcast and posting some stuff about that so you can follow along with that and you can hear the older episodes. And I have a time slot, like my own little radio show. You can hear it. And I'm so excited to share that with you. And there you can catch up on old episodes where I interview some female Marines, which I love to interview female Marines because as Navy, you know, we take care of our Marines. So today I have with me Amanda Palmer. She served for 8 years in the Marines, and I am so excited to hear your story. So welcome, Amanda.
Well, thank you so much for the welcome, Kia. Happy to be here with a fellow female veteran and a female sailor. We're a unique group.
We are. We absolutely are. So tell me, I have to jump right into it like I love to do. Tell me what made you join the military?
I come from a long line of service members, my father, my grandfather. I literally have really into genealogy right now, have gone back to like the 1600s, Civil War, World War II, a lot of veterans in my family. So when it came time to, I actually ran into my recruiter just out in the civilian world, and I just started asking questions and kind of wasn't 1,000% sure it wasn't something I thought about doing, but because there's so much in my family, that kind of patriotism just started whirring right up, and I decided this is what I want to do.
You know what? I totally get it. I had an aunt that served, and my mom was so passionate about serving in the military that she was really on me to get in there and do it and
Sure.
create a firm foundation for my life. So, and my brother also served in the army. So it was like kind of if she felt like you could do it, she was going to push you down that direction because she didn't get to do it as my mom.
Now,
So,
see,
yeah.
mine is the exact opposite. My uncle was a chief petty officer in the Navy,
Oh, wow.
and my father was a sergeant first class in the Army, and he had passed away in 87. So when my time came and I told my mom I wanted to join, she said, "You need to talk to your uncle first." And so I called him and I said, "Hey, mom wanted me to call you. I'm really thinking about joining the military." And she just said, "I should call you first." And he said, "What branch?" I said, "Do we really need to? I mean, is it important?" And he said, "Oh my God, you're going to join the Marine Corps." And I said, "Well, yeah." And he asked why. And I explained that, if you see a soldier, a sailor, an airman, and a Marine standing on the street, who's the one that sticks out? The Marine. They walk taller, they carry themselves with more pride. I just wanted to emulate what I saw as perfection. And he cautioned me, ironically, about the military. He said, the Navy is really poor to women in his experience. And he said the Marine Corps is even worse. And I was determined that I was going to be just fine, and kind of thanked him for his guidance and went on my way.
So you were like, I'm doing this.
Try to stop me.
Me, I was like, really? Am I doing this? That's how I was.
I had that thought when I got to boot camp, but not before.
I definitely had it before, on the way. Once I got into boot camp, as I was waiting for my company to form, once I got assigned to my company, once I was marching the whole way through. Every morning when I put my uniform on and at core school and as staff at the hospital, I thought, really, am I doing this? And I was doing it and I did it,
There you go.
and I'm super proud of it. So, it's just one of those things. Yeah, I think so too. So tell me, what was boot camp like for you as a Marine?
Crazy, chaotic. For me, I think we have this tendency to think as Marines, it's going to be so much physical. And what I really tell people now, even my son is actually an active duty Marine as well, is it's 80% mental and 20% physical is the way that I feel about it. Not to mean that there's not a lot of running and, extraneous exercise, but it's definitely mostly mental. And like the harder parts for me were the parts where they would show you how to do something, like make your rack, and then you would do it exactly like they did it and they would tell you it was wrong. That was hard for me. Or like I had a drill instructor, we were doing knowledge one night and she said, "Who knows what a Navy E7 is?" So I raised my hand, right? Because I know. So I confidently stand up and I said, "Ma'am, a Navy in the E7 is the chief petty officer, ma'am." And she said, "You're wrong. Sit down." And do you know the internal struggle of like, I know I'm not wrong, but you're not going to tell the drill instructor she's wrong. So I just kind of bit my tongue and sat down. And she came up to me later and she said, "How did you know?" And I said, "Man, this recruit's uncle's a chief petty officer." And she said, "Okay, good to go." And never mention it again because she's not going to look bad either.
Wow. I mean, unsurprising.
Yeah.
but yeah, but I mean, she could have said, yeah, that was it. Right. No, you
Not
couldn't.
after she said no. Can't take
Yeah.
that back.
Yeah. Can't take it back. So, did anybody stick out for you? Like, did you make any like close connections while you were in boot camp?
I really didn't. I actually kind of kept my head down. I mean, there were obviously like shocking things that happened in boot camp. We had a recruit, just this poor girl was like 6'5".
Wow.
And so she stuck out everywhere we went. When we're marching, if she's out of step, it's so noticeable. Her legs hung off the end of the rack. You know what I mean? She just could not get away from it. And they were constantly dogging on her. And one night we were all just getting ready to hit the rack and she stood up and said, "Fuck this," and walked out. And we were like, oh, oh God, somebody go tell the drill instructor. Cause if she's not there and the fire watch didn't say anything, we're all done. And she ended up coming back and I don't know where she went, but she graduated with us. And I never saw her again in the fleet. So I don't know how long she stayed in, but I just kind of kept my head down. And then towards the end, they were doing things for us, getting ready to graduate. And first, they asked if anybody could sing. They were going to have us do some sort of vocal thing. And I sing. It's one of my hobbies. And so I raised my hand and I know they were looking at me like, "This white girl." Yeah, right. She can sing. And so they were kind of surprised that I could. But other than that, I tried not to ever stick out. I think towards the very end, the night before we graduated, we had a girl that her parents brought her a disposable camera and she went through the squad bay and took pictures of everybody. So I like literally have a picture of me in boot camp sitting at my footlocker, like writing a letter home. And I smiled for it. And people literally were like, "Oh my God, she smiles." Because I didn't, you know what I mean? I was like in this mental space that I'm like, show no fear and just get through it. And so, yeah, it was, I, you know, obviously I like talked to people and stuff, but it wasn't, I feel like they're all my sisters and I certainly keep in touch with them now, but it was a very different experience from what my son has. He's stationed with his best friend from his platoon in boot camp. And so they hang out all the time and they're really close. So that just wasn't an experience that I had, but I would do anything for any one of them.
I feel that. I love that. I talk about it all the time, Company 908, and my boot camp sisters, and even my boot camp brothers, because we were a 50-50 type of company. We were integrated. And I know that we served during the same time, which is exciting. So we have like probably a lot of similar type of experiences, being that we were both in 94 to 2002. We found out just before we started this episode that we both went in November, and I was just talking on Dawn Owens' episode. It should just be coming out, or if it's probably out by now, by the time you're hearing this. She was talking about boot camp, and I was telling her that I chose strategically to go in November because I knew it would be the holidays. I went in on November 19th, 1994. And I thought, if it's the holidays, everyone's going to be in a good mood. It's more likely that they'll give us a lot of days off, like to chill because of Christmas and stuff. So really, it'll make boot camp just a little bit shorter and a little bit more pleasant with the Christmas
How did that
spirit,
work
right?
out for
It worked, actually. It was
Really?
really good. But considering we were in an experimental company and
Gotcha.
we didn't do like the regular galley week, or we didn't do that. We were a house, unit. So we cleaned the house and we kept the drill hall. And so my job was every weekend where there would be a boot camp graduation. And at graduation, they would pick a few of us to go into the officers' like sort of lounge and serve them. Right. So my job was to make Kool-Aid and serve it to the officers and special speakers or whoever was there. And just, I was a hostess basically. And there would be cake and everything. And then afterwards we'd have to clean that up and we'd get to eat cake. So like every week we're like eating cake and like,
Wow.
and
That
like
was not my
drinking.
experience.
Yeah. Yeah. It was great. And the Navy was, you said the Navy was more laid back. Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely the perception, and it's probably depends on where exactly you go and what your job is.
True.
But yeah, that was not my experience. I think obviously most people don't want to go during the holidays. I hadn't
Mhm.
really considered all of that and thought through it. I'm not even sure I knew exactly how long it would be.
Wow.
Um, I did know more than a lot of girls in my platoon. There were some girls that just thought the recruiter was cute and enlisted, and the
Oh
next
my
thing they
God.
were there, and they had no idea what they were in for.
Oh my
Like,
God.
right? That's what I'm saying. They were like, "Why are they yelling all the time? Like, what did you think was going to happen?" Like,
Oh
they just
my
had no
God.
idea, right? Can you imagine?
The recruiter's so cute. Yeah, of course I'll sign up for the Marines. Yeah,
Just
when do
give me
I
your
ship
number
off?
if I just go to Phelps.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, that's
So
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 crazy.
I went November 7th
Mhm.
and hadn't considered that all the holidays would be while I was in boot camp. So my first Marine Corps ball, November 10th, was I was still in like the first 3 days of receiving, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. It sucked. And the only one I really remember getting like any leniency for was Christmas. So at the very beginning of boot camp, people would get, care package or whatever from their family, and they would send, pokey bait or whatever. And so they asked everybody, either you stand there and eat it in front of everyone, every bit of it. I mean, I don't care if it's a whole box of ho-hos, you're going to eat every single one of those standing there in front of the platoon, or we'll put it aside and you guys can have it on Christmas. So everybody put it aside. We've been eating good the entire time we're there. They break it out on Christmas. Girl, we were so sick. And I mean, people were puking and just like moaning on the squad quarter deck. And oh, it was not good. But they let us watch a movie. They didn't yell at us that day. Obviously, it's people are psychologically in a different place around the holidays. And so they back off just a little bit. But yeah, the next day, nobody even wanted to go to chow in the morning. It was like, no, no more food, no more food. But yeah, but we
That
got
is
through it.
nuts.
Hey,
That is nuts. I remember that we definitely had downtime, and our company commanders, as they were called back then, they would let us open mail and they would be like, you have to share. So if you got packages and you got goodies, we all went down into the courtyard. Everybody would open up their stuff and you had to share, like everybody shared with everybody. And so that happened pretty regularly. Actually, it wasn't just like Christmas Day. It was a pretty frequent occurrence. But not to say that we didn't get beat, because we got beat down
oh
a
yeah,
lot.
yeah.
Okay. A lot. Okay. I remember the first time we got cycled, I just couldn't even understand like what was actually happening. So it was like an out of body experience. And I was like,
uh,
this happens. And I just remember when we were done, we're just being so exhausted and just physically fatigued, and your muscles were like shaking,
yeah,
and looking around at the faces of the other girls, and there were tears and people were like ready to throw up, and it was like, it was in a very intense moment, and that was the first one.
right,
After you got used to it, you got stronger,
right.
and you got the mental aspect of it was more under control too. You were like, all
Yep,
right, this is what I have to get through. But I'm with you. I wanted to be invisible
yeah,
in boot camp.
yeah.
I did not want to be noticed for anything. I just wanted to fade. And then there was another girl. She was another like fair skinned Black girl. I think her name was Butler, right? So I was Baker, she was Butler. And they always thought I was her. So I was like, I'm nailing this. Be this invisibility thing. Good. Cause if anything happens, they're gonna think it's her, right? It's her
There
that
you
they're
go.
looking for. So good thing that she didn't do anything and they didn't think it was me then. But yeah, I am on that entire vibe of just let me keep my head down. Let
Right.
me do what I need to do, get through it. I think I got dropped one time because I was on watch and I heard a sound. And so in my mind, I was like, let me recon back to the back of the bay, like where all of our racks were, and check out why there's sound because there should be no noise. I should be the only one in here standing watch. And so I go back there, but I go back there with like the old Charlie's Angels, like hand clasp, like I have a gun in my hand. Cause I think I'm alone. I'm probably hearing things and I'm going to make it fun for me. Right. So I'm
Yeah.
going back there and I'm like looking around the racks and I'm pointing my fingers gun because I did not have a gun in
Right.
Navy boot camp at 94. Okay, so then all of a sudden, we had a female company commander and we had a male, and he comes out and he just takes one look at me and true to form, not knowing who I am at all, looks at my name. So he has to look at my name to see who I am. And
Yeah.
he goes, Baker, drop. But he said it like kind of laughing in a way because he thought it must have been the most ridiculous things. He must have been standing there watching me do this dumb thing. But I was just playing because I was 19. Okay. And then I just had to immediately drop. And he left me there doing those push ups the whole time he walked through and did whatever he had to do. And I was doing them push ups
I
until
bet
he
he
came
left
out.
after laughing, telling
Yeah.
that story to
Yeah.
all his buddies.
Mhm. Yeah, for
The
sure.
full Charlie's Angel.
Right? Went full Charlie's Angels on the whole situation. So that was one of my most memorable boot camp experiences, the only time I got dropped. And he didn't even know who I was when he did it too.
That's
So,
awesome.
yeah.
We had my most memorable was probably we had a young lady who left her 3-month old to come to boot camp, which I can't even imagine as a
Mhm.
mother. She left her 3-year-old. She came there, little white girl, and she had straight hair, shoulder length hair, and so most of us, I'm sure it was the same way in the Navy, you could pull your hair up in a bun or a French braid or no ponytails or anything like that in the Marine Corps. Or if it was short, you had to keep it above the bottom edge of your collar. So we had a quote unquote beauty shop that they could go to make sure that they were staying within regs. So during mess and maintenance week, which is kind of like, I think like your galley week, maybe it's where it's a little bit of reprieve from the training and you're just either, polishing statues on base or you're
Mhm.
helping organize books or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And this girl went and got a perm. She got a perm and she came back. This is right before third phase, which is the last phase for us. And it's not like you're not going to notice. I mean, it's like stuck her finger in a light socket. It is very curly. And we're all thinking like, oh no. And the drill instructor comes out and she's like, push. And we were at the point in boot camp when we're trying to be a team. So everybody goes up on the quarter deck and we're all going to push with her because she's our teammate and blah, blah, blah. And they were like, nope, just her. And I thought, oh my God, they're going to kill this girl. I mean, I'm sure they were within whatever their regs are for like, you can only do it for so many minutes and you got to give a break or whatever. But yeah, I thought they were going to kill her. So that was probably the most like shocking. Can't believe this just happened. We also had one moment at the very beginning where I think we're the only branch that does the third party. I mean, third party speech where this recruit makes a request, that kind of thing. And so we're all still learning it. And we were all sitting in front of our racks. They had stripped us down. So we're naked. And this recruit raises her hand and she's like, excuse recruit, drill instructor, recruit so-and-so has a question. And she's like, what? And the recruit said, recruit so-and-so just urinated all over recruit's leg, ma'am. She was so scared to request permission to make a head call and screw it up. She lifted her leg. Craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. And the entire platoon just went and stared. And, I think it was a shocking moment, but I think every one of us in there knew that fear of, I don't want to screw this up and get punished, So I think we all had sympathy for her and nobody razzed her about it, but I just never in my life had seen something like that. It's
That is
crazy.
wild. I mean, that fear will push you to do crazy, crazy things, which brings me to my next question about your boot camp experience. What was the most challenging part of Marine boot camp for you?
Sleep deprivation,
Mm.
hands
Mhm.
down. And to this day it is. You're exercising and the mental stress that you're under is physically exhausting. And you get to the point where you've got to do this nighttime training, you're doing the night ranges, you're out later than normal. And it's not like, well, we'll just let you sleep in. It's just going to be a later night, deal with it. I mean, war doesn't stop because you're tired. So you just keep doing what you need to do. And man, I am not a pleasant person when I'm sleep deprived.
Who is?
But you can't not be, you know what I mean? Like you're sitting there with the drill instructor, you can't clap back at him. So yeah, that was absolutely hands down the worst part for me was the sleep deprivation.
So, what happened in your career after boot camp? Where did you go?
So I went to Fort Meade, Maryland for my school. It's where NSA is. I was a combat videographer. So basically my job was to videotape everybody else doing their jobs, whether it was for posterity or making training videos, that sort of thing. And then my first duty station, I'll never forget it. They handed us a package. They came into class one day and they handed us all a package. And I'm a firm believer. I don't care. You could have a master's degree. You go to boot camp, you lose all common sense. I mean, all common sense. So they hand me this package and it says Camp Smith, comma HI. And they said, Keller, do you know what HI is? And I said, nope. And they were like, that's Hawaii. I'm like, oh my God. So I'm this little girl from a town of 2,500 people in Nebraska. My first duty station is going to be Hawaii. So it was Headquarters Marine Forces Pacific. It's this little teeny tiny base. There's two base houses and it's for like the XO and the Sergeant Major. There's 4 barracks, which when I got there, they told me, I don't know how long you'll be in these. They're supposed to be torn down, and that never happened. They're still standing. There was probably 200-ish Marines in the barracks, maybe a couple sailors here and there. Everybody else was commuting from a different base. It was inverted. We had probably 10 officers to 1 enlisted. So people didn't walk around. It was also the headquarters for SINCPAC, Commander in Chief Pacific Forces. So people didn't walk around outside in camis usually, like carried them to work, because otherwise you'd be just saluting for your entire walk to work. So I got told from the minute I got there, this is not a normal duty station. This is not like the Fleet Marine Corps, blah, blah, blah. And I just thought, oh, whatever. But it wasn't. We had E2s working directly for O6s, like directly reporting to O6s. We just had it was a different world. There was no chow hall. There was no PX or commissary. There was just a little shopette. So we got basic allowance for subsistence to go out and eat on the economy or go to Pearl Harbor or Hickam Air Force Base. There was no video camera when I got there. There was no editing system. So I became like the customer service person for audiovisual. It was a really small shop in this basement of this building that was a hospital in World War II. So having to go there in the middle of the night was not pleasant. There were times that I did that. When I got there, since there was no camera, the command was just starting video teleconferencing, right? That was kind of new back then. And so they got this, I don't want to speculate on how much it cost, but they got this system and they said, well, she's a videographer. It's a video teleconferencing system. She can do it. And here I am, a private first class, a little E2. This has nothing to do with my job. But what are you going to say? No. So I get the manual. I read that sucker from front to back. I learn how to set up the system. I start making like networking with other bases, getting to know people that know more about it than I do, which I think is another huge part of the military is networking, and stood it up and ran it and, did the troubleshooting for it. And I'd be in the room. In the skiff, they had kind of a big screen that they would talk to. And then there was like a little cubby in the back. And I would just sit back there in case anything happened. So there were times that the general would give me the one finger, come here, and I'm low crawling in my Charlie skirt over to the table, like, yes, just because he wasn't sure how to mute it or something. I mean,
Right.
it was crazy, but good because I got FaceTime with some higher ranking people. So like I was known, but I wasn't known. But I think that's what starts you on that networking path. I had probably on the good side of things as a videographer, everybody wants to be memorialized on camera, right? So when they see that you have one, and this was before the days of cell phones and everything was instant, when they see you have one, it's this like bartering. Hey, get me on camera and I'll let you do this. So I pulled the lanyard on an M1908 howitzer. Yeah, huge, huge.
Incredible.
Pretty sure not a lot of women Marines have done that, but I'm not going to not do it. You know what I mean? Like it's such an awesome experience. And I remember we were with an artillery battery, and they had a 5-ton with a 50 cal mounted in the turret on top. And they asked me if I wanted to get up there and shoot some rounds. And I was like, yeah, man. I had to stand on the back of the seat behind the steering wheel. And I'm still like barely reaching the thumb clips, barely seeing over it. And he gave me my fields of fire. So I start shooting. And he's like, Gunny says, oh my God, she's actually hitting the target. And I said, oh, my bad. Did you want me to just like spray the treetops? Because I thought fields of fire meant that's where you're supposed to fire. And he kind of laughed and he was like, okay, you're good. You're good. Got to ride on an LCAC we had a lost lieutenant, lost his entire unit. And we had our own vehicle because we were documenting the evolution of a maritime pre-positioning force ship, taking everything off, getting it out to the units, getting it loaded back up. And so we had our own Humvee and our own driver. So we offered this lieutenant a ride. We get out there and he says, do you guys want to take a ride on the LCAC? You can go out to I couldn't even tell you what ship it was. The Blue Ridge, maybe? I don't even know. I was like, okay. And so we went out there and did that. That was 1 in a million experience. But I think with the good comes the bad. Had some not so pleasant experiences. My first exercise was in Florida, and I was at advanced parties. It was a bunch of 7th Com Marines and me. There was, I think, I don't know, 15 of us. But because we were in Florida, people that had family nearby got to go home and visit their family the first weekend that we were there. And I'm the only female. I have my own Quonset hut by myself next to the Quonset hut full of men. Well, not full, but with the group that was there. And they said, the colonel said, or the captain said, listen, either everybody goes or we post a phone watch. So the guy said, it's okay. Come with us. We'll let you go with us. So it's like me and 11 male Marines in a little GMC Safari van. We drive down to Daytona. I don't know these guys. They're not even from my base. I don't know them. But they're like,
feels stressful.
Strangely, it wasn't. Looking back, I mean, that could have gone so wrong.
Yeah.
So wrong.
Definitely could have gone wrong.
Nope, they were all great guys. I keep in contact with a lot of them to this day. We went down to Daytona, hung out for the weekend. I never felt in danger. I never felt uncomfortable. Fortunately, I was surprised. I hadn't even heard the term military sexual trauma when I started. And they said, oh, we've got an MST program. And I said, what is that? I don't even know what that is. But it was that one-on-one, and it was 16 weeks. And like I said, really repetitious, but it gave me some tools to help me until I got to this therapist that I'm with now. And it's a difference maker. So that's why I just always try to tell people, like, it's okay if the first therapist isn't right, keep looking, just ask for another one. You're not wrong to do that.
No, and well within your right. Like, and I demanded it. It was like, you could have given me what I need. Like, this is what you do. You're supposed to do it for me. And sometimes you just have to fight for yourself. If you don't advocate for yourself, who is going to do it? Who is going to do it for you? So, okay. So I think that is amazing advice. We didn't even get to the advice portion yet. And I think I understand very well why you would want to get out of the military. How long did that smear campaign go on for before you decided to get out?
So I was on a med board simultaneously for a knee injury. So it wasn't really my reason for getting out. It definitely, had I not had the injury, it wouldn't have prevented me from re-enlisting because I made staff sergeant before then. But this guy ended up climbing the ranks I have a very, very small job, the highest civilian in our MOS in the entire Marine Corps. So he would have continued to be in a position of authority over me if I had stayed in that line of work. So being a small job, people talk, it would have been absolute torture. I mean, I would have been miserable, I think. It wasn't the reason that I got out, but it definitely would have been, I think, if I hadn't had a knee injury.
Right. Oh my God. It makes me so mad, right? Like it's infuriating. Like I feel so much anger in my stomach right now.
I
Um,
feel sure that I blamed myself for so long. And I struggle with the guilt too of because I didn't say anything, because I felt that I couldn't. It was a he said, she said, and there was so much of that going on at the time that, I'm sure I wasn't the first and I probably wasn't the last. And how many other people did this happen to because I didn't say something? I struggled with that for a long time. One of the therapists said to me, I'm like, I didn't do anything. And they said, when you had that moment where you flew through all the possible options, that was you making a choice to survive. Boom. Okay. I never thought about it like that. I didn't realize that that's what I was doing at that point. And I did kind of consider telling, but I weighed the options and I was like, probably not going to be believed. Then it's going to get even worse. So I made the decision not to. I still have the guilt from not saying anything, but I'm working through that and understanding, being okay and forgiving myself for making the decision that was best for me, because it didn't always look like that to me when I was kind of going back and examining my actions. And, it helped too when you're a female in the military and there's so few of us. It helped too. I reconnected with one of the sergeants, the male sergeants in that office on Facebook, and we were chatting and it came up and he said, I knew something happened because of the 180. You went from the golden child to this piece of shit. And it was so stark that I didn't know what, but I knew something. And he was very supportive. He's a pastor now. I follow his sermons because they really touch me. So, it helps to have that support from the male veterans as well, because they don't have a lot of the same experiences that we have. They don't understand. I'm a big proponent of, don't just complain, but be a proponent of change. Get out there and do your part and volunteer and do what you're doing, a podcast, and get that information out there and help us all learn together and support each other. And so part of the way that I did that was in teaching my son so that, he can maybe be at some point as he rises through the ranks, maybe he can be that and stop it from happening to somebody else. But they don't know what they don't know, So
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I just think of it like when you were telling the story and you were like, these thoughts were going through your head, and you made these decisions. We do what we think is right in the time. That
right,
is totally a survival technique, right? It's just is the decision like, and in the moment you're like in fight, flight, or freeze. So you chose freeze. I'm going to
right,
freeze and I'm going to disassociate and this is going to happen and I'm going to live. This
right,
is my best chance to live,
exactly.
right? And obviously you made the right choice because you have a son who's a Marine who you've taught to protect women and to
Yep.
do the right thing while in
You just think,
service to the country. Right? Like, come on, like, imagine this. Imagine the women he's protected
yeah,
because you made the decision to be alive and to have him. He
right,
might not be here if you
right,
decided another way. So if that
right,
can help you feel a little better, then I hope it does because and then the thing is the guy, he's a predator, right? And you may have been the only one. You don't know that.
yep,
There may have been other ones that made the same exact choice you made that
yep,
said, I'm because he climbed those ranks, right?
yep,
But I will say this karma does not forget an address. So while on paper, he may look like he's got away scot free, I can
yeah,
guarantee you he's paid some way, somehow, if not already and has been, but will.
yeah,
So, I don't think anybody gets away scot-free forever, even if it's when they're meeting their maker, if that's what you believe, but
yeah,
they don't get away scot-free, and I just think you made the best decision that you could in the time, and, look at all the lives, including mine now, that you've had a chance to impact with your story, and everyone that will listen to this podcast, and when I started this podcast, I said I don't know who's going to listen to me. Right. Right. And I said, but if one person does and one person hears this and they feel less alone and I've helped them, then I've
Yes.
done my mission. I've
Yep.
done what I set out to do. If I could just help one person, and I've been doing this since 2019, and I'd like to believe I've helped a lot of people just by doing this little podcast. And so your story will do the same, right?
It's very humbling because you don't feel like the hero of your own story in those
Mhm.
instances, but it's empowering on the other side as you go through the therapy and kind of learn whatever it is that you need to learn to process it, and then to go out and be able to help other people. It feels much better on that side, but in the beginning it certainly doesn't feel that great. But again, if it can help somebody, happy to do it.
Oh, of course. And then the therapy piece, that's such good information to share. I'm so glad we got a chance to talk about that on the podcast because that's equally as helpful. And I think I see yesterday when I was interviewing Dawn, I saw a travel blog in her future with her sister who's Navy and she was Army. And I said, Army, Navy doing a travel blog together, just, for military women, right?
That would be awesome.
I know, right? I need to start my own channel for all of these things. But for you, I see advocating and
Yeah.
speaking on stage and maybe writing a book and like sharing about this process for you and putting it out there in the world. And that is, well, that's his karma, right? Because
Yeah.
he knows who he is.
Right. Exactly. Yep.
Even if you never name him, he knows who he is. And just for you to be speaking out and helping these young women out here
Yes.
and sharing your story, even starting right here on this podcast right now today, is
Totally.
just such a beautiful movement of your own, you know?
Yes.
Maybe
I
this is
agree.
the start of
And
something
healing. It's just another layer of healing.
for sure. And that's inadvertently, I have been told that this space that I've created of the Female Veterans Podcast does help people heal by helping them to share their story. So,
Because we know we're not alone. I
yeah,
mean, I'm listening to your guests talk about their experiences and even some of the older veterans. I'm like, it's sad that that was still happening back in the 70s or whatever, but okay, I know exactly what you just sit there and nod your head like I know exactly what she was going through. Yep, I understand it. I read a book about women in World War II, and even back then, they had this, we've got to be twice as good. The men thought they were just there to service them. I mean, it's like, how long does this go on before we correct it and get things, where they need to be? And because we're such a small sliver of the military, we got to be a little bit louder, I think. But yeah, I'm all about getting involved and actually have been writing just for catharsis, if nothing else. You know what I mean? So maybe that will take on something.
it's just food for thought, is all I'm
Yeah.
saying. I'm just putting it out there for you to chew on. But if you do decide to do something with it, definitely connect with me so I can see how I can help support that mission. So,
Awesome. I love that you do that. Thank you.
of course. So, I guess this is the part of the show where I ask you now we know that you have had to have a med board because you were injured, and that's why you got out of the military. But what was the transition like for you at that point?
I was married to a service member at that point. So in some aspects, it was a little bit easier in the immediate separation period. But as I have progressed forward, all of these skills and tools that we learn in the military, we don't forget them. They live with us. They become who we are, right? And I have a lot of people in the civilian world. I work for the federal government. Even though we have a lot of veterans in there that have said, like, oh, you're intimidating. And I think, like, what? I am a nice person. I just want the best for other people. Like, I can't. What are you talking about? But I think it's the directness. I think it's the assertiveness that men have. But when it comes from women, that's just not expected. And so it kind of takes people aback. I don't look at it as a bad thing. And I'll state that, like, I'm not intimidating anybody. I'm very open. People can come to me. I do my best to help bring other people up with information as I get it. Here's what I've learned about working in the federal government. And as people come in under me, I'm sharing that knowledge. I'm doing whatever I can, male and female, to help them. So, I feel like that has helped a little bit. Obviously, other veterans in the workforce feel the same way. I hear it a lot. I see it a lot on Facebook pages. I'm not really sure how to fix it because I think it's a good thing. It's just that the civilian world's not really used to seeing it from women, I think.
Agreed. I mean, if I had a nickel for every time I had a guest on this show that told me that their transition was difficult because of how they present in the civilian world, I think for me it was a little bit. I went into corporate after I left the military for a lot of years, right? I had a whole corporate career before I was a stay-home mom, finished my degrees, and then started doing this. This is like my second whole career. And so while I was doing that, like climbing the corporate ladder, as they say, or trying to, I had a lot of experiences where I was just different.
Yeah.
Like I could not stand, and I mean, granted, this was the 90s or the early 2000s, I guess. I could not stand the corporate culture of the time. It was so devoid of any like real kinship. And I was used to that camaraderie, that
Yeah.
brotherhood, sisterhood type of connection. I was surrounded by guys on my duty station who were brothers to me. I'm still in touch with them today. There was like my crew. Like I had girlfriends, but I had this core group of guy friends that protected me, that kept
Yep.
me safe and out of trouble in so many types of situations I could have been in where
Yep.
things could have gone awry. And I was protected by my brothers, right?
Yep.
So I love them to this day and keep in touch with many of them.
Yep.
And the civilian world just lacks that. People are dog eat dog. I mean, it can be like really backstabby and all of that in the military too, but it
Right.
wasn't necessarily my experience and not in the same way as I
Mhm.
found it to be in the civilian world. I felt like I spoke different, I carried myself differently, and that put people off a lot of times. Even in interviews, when I first got out of the military, I think I say this a lot, but I had to take being in the military, take my service off my job history. Mhm.
Really?
Yeah, until after 9/11, actually. So,
Gotcha.
it was just I was just so different. I was like the odd one out, and I wasn't like and what comes to mind initially is like if you have PTSD, if you
Mhm.
come out and like you're angry and you're like, and I've heard stories from other guests where they were termed the bitch and all of
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
because they were like dealing with stuff too when they came out and hadn't gone through their therapy and their healing process stuff, but they were also in this like sort of military package just plopped down into the civilian world, and everything's different and it's a whole different world and you
And
have to
there's
try to assimilate.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, I
So
felt like
crazy.
that. I
Yeah.
definitely did. My transition out was tough. Some people, they have great transitions out, right? Mine was rough. And I told you when I went in, I was like, what am I doing here? Like, I can't even believe I'm doing this for the entire 5 years until my last day. I was so happy when I was like graduation day or like, I don't know, your wedding day. I don't know. I was so
Right.
happy that my last day and I got a letter of appreciation from the command and like they threw me a party and I was like, this is the best day of my life. I'm getting out of the military. And then I got out and I was
Yeah.
like, do I go
Now,
back in? Like, what do I do? Like, I don't know if I can go back in. Like, I couldn't even believe I made it that time.
right?
But I don't like this. This is weird. So it took me some time. It took me a lot of ups and downs and a lot of like stuff I went
Yeah.
through, we'll say, and like for about 5 years until I sort of started to get my footing as a civilian, to be honest.
Wow. I
Mhm.
think working for the government helped with that a little bit because there's so many prior service in the government. Like my first government job, there was another female Marine that hired me. I was at a DoD dependent school in Okinawa, Japan. So she got me.
Mhm.
She understood me, and kind of helped me navigate that. And so, I've tried to do that for others as well as I move forward. But I think that that made it a little bit easier than just going straight civilian. I still struggle with like your workday begins at 8. That means you're ready to go at 8. I had a lady that was late every day. I'm like, I don't well, his lunch wasn't ready. Then make the lunch the day before. I don't, you know what I mean? Like I don't understand the mentality. I don't understand the kind of lackadaisical attitude. I struggle with that a little bit, but I also have standards, and you're being paid for this, so I don't have a lot of sympathy. Because, there's a lot of people, especially in 2008 when I was doing this, like, there's a lot of people that need jobs right now, and you're taking up space and then not being productive and not doing your share. Like, I have a problem with that. That's not cool. So get up or
Yeah.
get out.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think there's just things that we're taught in the military that other people, it's just doesn't even occur to them.
Right?
For me, I think the hard part was people that just collect a check. Like
Yes.
they come to work and they just don't, for a long time, I couldn't understand that. Like I was like, why are you not doing the job?
Right.
Right? Like what and it took me time to realize this whole I'm just here collecting a check. Like I don't care about what I'm doing. I'm not trying to grow or learn or improve or even
Right.
do anything with this job. I just need a paycheck. And so I'm going to pass the days
Right.
until and so I just do the minimum to get by. Like for a long time I couldn't understand that until I was in one of my last companies I worked for. I was like, this is the norm here. This is the corporate culture. If I don't learn how to chill, because one of the things I learned we talked about in a recent episode was be the favorite. So in the military, if you're one of the favorites, your career goes a lot different than if you're the person who's not the favorite. And I've been both. So I
Yeah.
know the difference between, and so do you actually.
Yep.
You know what it's like to be the golden child, and you know what it's like to be the one who's considered like the turd of the group, right?
Right. Yep.
And so that difference is big. So I carried that with me into my corporate world, and it really worked for me. Just always like be the favorite, however that meant to be.
Yeah.
So in one of my roles, I like had to dumb it down in a way, like just kind of okay, stop outperforming people because they don't like you. Like that was a life lesson. Like if you outperform people, they're not going to like you. This corporate environment, because everyone is different. This
Hmm.
one is if you're not a slacker, you're not cool. So it was just
Wow.
interesting learning those things from corporate. I hated it. Oh my God. That's why veterans are best working for themselves. I think most, or a federal job could be a good
Seriously.
one.
Yeah. Because then you're like, I see those people and I think like, why are you being paid? Like, why are you earning money? Or worse, why do you make more money than I make? You're incompetent. You're unable to, you don't have a backbone. You can't, that drives me crazy.
Maybe they're the favorite.
Yeah. And you have to kind of take a step back and realize you can only do what you can do
Yeah.
and try to give good guidance to people. But yeah, that's tough.
Well, I have one final question for you before
Mhm.
we wrap up the show. And I want to know for all the female veterans coming up behind you, what advice would you give to your female veteran sisters?
So I would definitely say remember that you're representing all other female veterans. And I don't mean that in a way to put a lot of pressure on you, but people have come before us that have made great strides. And when we conduct ourselves in a manner that isn't the best, then it kind of knocks us down a couple of pegs and we need every inch we can get. So, just be aware of that. Do your best to be a good leader, make that your mission. I think I think your secondary job the first couple of years that you're in is learn from those around you. If you see somebody that's a good leader, why are they a good leader? What do they do? How do they talk to their troops? How do they conduct themselves? What makes them so great? And then emulate those things. What makes somebody a shitty leader that everybody hates? What is he doing? How's he talking to his people? How does he treat his people? Don't emulate that behavior. And I don't mean to just say him because it could be females also, but you know, we need to take those things and learn from them and kind of incorporate it into how we lead as we climb the ranks. Help those behind you, you know, and I don't mean as a favorite. I just mean help them learn, help them see, help them understand. We all represent each other. So yeah, that would be my guidance to them. And listen to your instinct, listen to your intuition. Never doubt that.
For sure. For sure. I mean, if I told you how many times that I didn't listen to my intuition and it got me into trouble,
Yep.
I learned the hard way, really hard to just trust that inner voice, and things usually end up okay. So I love that advice, especially. I noticed I read on your form that you filled out before the podcast that you're really into networking. Did you want to share any insights on why it's so important to network?
Yeah, I think that, that's another big component of the military is the ability to network, and it comes everywhere from getting something corrected in a record of yours, knowing the right person to get something done. Even in the civilian world, I'm not afraid to say who's in charge of that and then go to that person because I need a clearer understanding in order to make this work for us. I just think that networking, whether it's professionally, personally, I've learned so many things through the years and through going to women's veterans events that I share with every veteran I can, male and female. If I can do something or I have the knowledge that can help somebody else, I want to give it to them. And so by networking, you start to learn these people in these different fields, different jobs that you can go to ask a question, that they're a subject matter expert where maybe you're not. So I think that's a huge part of success in the military and the civilian world is networking. And I do it up and down. I mean, just because somebody's younger than me doesn't mean that they don't have knowledge that I don't. So I'm a very upfront person in saying that I don't know everything. So I'm ready to learn and use that information. So we can get that accomplished by networking.
I agree. Networking is everything.
Yes, ma'am.
You just got to know the right people and work those connections, and it can
Absolutely.
really take you far. Really,
So,
really, really. So,
but I'm surprised when people start saying, Amanda Palmer told me. Reach out. You've got great information on your podcast.
well, send them to me. I love it. And you never know because it goes both ways. You never know how you can support and encourage and benefit each other. So I love
Yep.
it. I think it's so
And my
important.
out. I'm happy to help however I can.
I love that. Well, Amanda, I want to thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast. It's been such a pleasure to spend time talking stories with you. And is there anywhere we can follow your story if we want to connect with you, if we want to encourage you to write that book?
Well, right now I'm on Instagram as AM Palmer 75 and Facebook as Amanda Keller Palmer. I don't do a whole lot on the Instagram, but send me a message on Facebook. I'm happy to respond. And again, always happy to help in any way that I can with any knowledge that I have.
Well, if you've been listening to this show or if you're new here, I will tell you that in the description box of the episode where you go to read what this episode is about, if you scroll down, I will always put resources like links where you can connect with Amanda so that it's easy for you. Any other resources will be there as well. So, with that, I think we're going to wrap it up. I just want to say thank you again so much, Amanda. You have been such a pleasure to hang out with and talk to. And thank you for being so candid and open with sharing your story.
Absolutely. Thank you for doing this. It's been incredible to be a part of it. And I wish you all the luck and good fortune moving forward and connecting with everybody that you connect with.
Thank you so much. And like I said, with that, we're going to wrap it up. So, earlier I was talking about the streaming app. It's called Coming Home Well, CHW. You can find it on Google or Apple Store. You can download that. It has radio content like music. It has shows like the Female Veterans Podcast and other podcasts that you can listen to. It streams all the time. I actually went to go check it out finally, and the Female Veterans Podcast was on. And I was like, oh my God, that's me. It's so funny. But you can definitely, I encourage you to check that out. They have very, very good intentions to help people. And I like to be involved with organizations that like to help people. Stay tuned for the newsletter. That's going to be coming out soon. And everybody who has been patiently waiting to be a guest on the show, I have been cleaning my house, meaning I've hired staff. And the Female Veterans Podcast is expanding a little bit. So there's going to be more content. You can go to Instagram at the Female Veterans Podcast and start following along. The more you engage with the content, the more I can grow. There's a YouTube channel now. I will start to have video option for guests. So if you want to do the podcast and you get the form from me, and the link for us to do the show, you'll see an option on there that says, do you want to do audio, video type of podcast, like a live stream, a pre-recorded, or an audio? That's the options. And so you have a choice now because I have a YouTube channel now. So go to YouTube and search the Female Veterans Podcast. Please subscribe. It's free and you help spread the content to more people who need to see it and who need to hear these stories and to know that veterans are not just men. Okay. We're out here. We do the job. We a lot of times have crazy experiences. Okay. And or things that we've had to endure and heal from, like Amanda. And we're out here doing this, and we need to let the world know that we're here. So that is one reason that this podcast exists. So please go and support that. I am on X, formerly known as Twitter. I hardly post, but that should change now that I have a virtual assistant. So you might want to go and follow me on there as well. And then just stay tuned because there's a lot more great stories coming. I've been doing this a while, but I still feel like I'm just getting started. So thank you so much for coming on this journey with me. I love you guys, and I'll talk to you next time.